The zip tie cracked through the air and bit my wrists before I could even turn the floor of Riverway Galleria shining up at me like a second mirror that already knew how this would go, and I heard the guard say it loud enough for the perfume counter to hear, "Stop right there, ma'am." I told him steady as a metronome, "You're making a mistake. I'm Captain Maya Turner, Riverbend PD," and he smirked like I'd handed him a coupon fake badge. Seen that. Then he nodded to his buddy, and the two of them closed in with radios hissing like a storm that had already decided to rain. My daughter Kayla was upstairs trying on a blue dress and texting me jokes about sparkles. I was supposed to meet her by the escalator, but instead this buzz-cut hero named Brock Henders yanked my trench coat like he was pulling down a flag. The rookie Finn Alvarez hovered with that "I know what I'm seeing and I hate it" face. And a store manager with a clipboard asked for my bag about a $600 necklace, and I told her there were 40 cameras overhead, so she should use them. But her eyes were already fixed on the guards. The decision had been made 2 hallways ago. They walked me through the scent of citrus and cardamom and out into drizzle that slicked the concrete. A dull silver people stared the way people do, half curious, half grateful. It's not them. And the zip tie kept digging into my skin, and Brock announced it for the crowd like a play-by-play. High-value target secured. You know what I mean? Some folks say the wildest things when they think the badge makes them taller. A squad car rolled up like it had been idling 10 feet out of frame, and Sergeant Travis Pike stepped out with that chest-forward swagger men practice in bathroom mirrors. He didn't ask a single question. He spun me, bounced my cheek off a pillar so hard I tasted pennies, and said, "Resisting Captain," dragging the title through his teeth like an insult, and I made my voice small and sharp at the same time. "You're out of protocol, Sergeant. But men like Pike don't hear rules unless they wrote them, and then like a scene they didn't storyboard." I heard my girl mom and the new world began in a little glowing rectangle. Kayla lifted her phone and said, "I'm going live to nobody and everybody," and I saw the red counter jump and someone whispered, "Isn't she a cop?" And someone else said, "They better not," and Pike stiffened because cameras are kryptonite when your whole act is shadows. My father's old trench coat snagged on a post, and the inside lining flashed my real badge, the one I'd worn for years on bodies and doorsteps and midnights. Nobody looked at it. That's the trick. Real power hides in plain sight while fake power makes a parade, and then dispatch cracked through his radio. "All units verify, subject is Captain Maya Turner, cease transport, internal affairs en route," and his face did that quick shut-the-door thing. "Shut it off," he hissed to Brock. But the rookie Finn glanced at Kayla's phone like he was watching a tide roll in and couldn't stop it. And I didn't smile because my lip was swelling. But inside there was a small, stubborn smile that had waited years for backup, that didn't carry a gun. They patched up my cheek, they sent me home, they sent me a polite little email titled administrative leave like I'd requested a spa day, and at 2:11 a.m., the house was quiet and the coffee was mean, and I sat at my kitchen table and logged into the system with the credentials I helped design because you don't forget your own locks. And I searched 18 months of Riverway Galleria, arrests, detainments, citations, anything that smelled like perfume and routine, and the screen poured numbers like a slot machine that hates you. 296 arrests for alleged shoplifting, 92%. Black or brown, 83%. Shuffled straight into a private probation treadmill called Pathway Compliance Services. PCS, if you like. Soft names for hard things. $310 a month with late fees sharp enough to bleed you out a neat total at the bottom. 6.8 million, no blushing, no apology, just math smiling back at me. I drilled down Saberline security contracts, PCS invoices, LLCs nested inside other LLCs like those little dolls my aunt kept on a shelf, and the signatory on half of it was a man who cuts ribbons and checks with equal ease. Grant Colfax, Riverbend's favorite developer, the guy who loves playgrounds on camera and payments off camera, and in one folder, like it was daring me to open it. Emails, subject lines that read quarterly targets and program throughput. Deputy Chief Samuel Dyer CC'd on messages that felt like they belonged to a factory, not a police department. And the anger inside me, it went so quiet it started to hum. I encrypted everything, sent a packet to Nora Vasquez at the Riverbend Herald, because if you want daylight, you don't beg for a window, you call a woman who breaks down walls. And then my phone buzzed with a number that didn't have a name, and a voice cold as freezer burn said, "You should be asking who is with your daughter right now." And a photo arrived. Kayla's locker with a sticky note that read, "Next no signature, just a dare," and the place behind my ribs turned to steel. I wired my house to the cloud, set a panic alert to a quiet channel where good cops still live, watched a black SUV idle like a stray dog that bit once before hit the silent button. Watched it roll away, because cowards leave when bright light hits their eyes, and morning came the color of old pennies. I drove Kayla to school, lied with a smile. I'm fine. And at the precinct, whispers moved ahead of me like wind in tall grass. My credentials were already locked. I called Dyer and said, "Why?" And he gave me that tired uncle voice. "Take some time off, I'll handle it," and hung up. And in the lot, someone had opened my tires with a blade and spelled traitor on my hood like they were carving their initials into a picnic table. Yeah, that happened. I took a cab to Nora's office. She was pale but fierce. "You're being tracked," she said. "My firewall got hit 3 times before noon RPD IP. We both knew what that meant, and we planned it the only way that makes sense when truth is in a rush. Heavy and fast receipts, not rumors, names, not hints. A story that could carry itself if we went down." That night, we met in the underground garage because apparently this life of mine took a hard left into cinema. Footsteps echoed, 3 men in masks with brass knuckles that flashed under bad lighting. One of them cracked Nora's ribs with a cheap shot. I broke an elbow into a gut, got grabbed from behind, twisted loose from training. I never thought I'd need outside a classroom, drew and aimed, and they scattered because cameras were rolling somewhere, and courage is rare when the money isn't guaranteed. The phone screen was spiderwebbed, but the files had already floated to the cloud like seeds on wind. PCS bonus lists for Pike labeled collections. A photo of him taking an envelope from Colfax's fixer outside a steakhouse that serves water like its instruction. We got Nora to the ER. I flashed my badge like a memory and a promise, texted my attorney friend Lena Cho, and the 3 of us agreed on the only path with a chance. The city tried to pretend it was business as usual. The mayor called it a smear. Dyer called me unstable. The union said patience. And I said people don't bleed slow just to make you comfortable. So we built our own stage. We lived stream to stream, cloud to cloud, mirror to mirror. And with a 17-year-old named Sky Monroe, who once stopped a beating with a 6-inch screen and a shout, we stitched together a dossier called the Riverway File, 42 pages of money and orders. And that particular brand of polite email where men move misery with bullet points, we pushed it at 6 p.m. sharp and watched the counter roll like an odometer. You're trying not to notice, and then Sky posted something that made me sit down on the edge of my bed and press my palm to my mouth. Uncut surveillance from inside the store that management swore didn't exist. There was Pike loitering near the jewelry counter, whispering into Patrice's ear, pointing at the exit, checking his watch, pulling his radio. And 7 minutes later, I walked in, oblivious, with a shopping list and a tired smile. 2 minutes after that, Brock made his move. It wasn't bad luck, it was choreography, the kind that leaves bruises and invoices. You know that sound when a city decides it's done being polite, horns that aren't angry, feet that find each other, hands holding cardboard with marker bleeding in the rain, voices rising from porches and bus stops and kitchen tables by sundown. People were outside Riverway Galleria with umbrellas and righteous lungs, and I stood above I-94 on an overpass in a hoodie pulled low drizzle seaming my hair, and I spoke into Kayla's phone because the microphone at City Hall wasn't built for me anymore. "You've seen the videos," I said. "You've seen what they did for 18 months. Mostly black, mostly poor, were arrested, fined, and pushed into a treadmill to feed somebody's balance sheet. That wasn't policing. That was extortion with a badge," and my voice didn't shake for once, and the live counter ran wild, and I thought maybe, just maybe this time the truth was moving faster than the lie. The council called a hearing. Colfax called lawyers. Dyer called the old boys. Pike called nobody. We walked into that chamber with the rain still on our coats, and the room hummed with the kind of silence that means everybody chose to show up instead of pretending they had other plans. I clicked through slides, bank wires, signed contracts, a spreadsheet actually titled Productivity Metrics with officer names in one column and a number that didn't belong to any oath in another. Councilwoman Jacobs said, "Captain Turner, these are serious allegations," and I said, "They're facts," and on the back wall I saw a rookie. I didn't know, put a hand over his mouth like he was trying to hold in whatever would come out next, and then Pike broke the door. He stumbled in, got a strange gray service pistol in his hand, trembling like the rest of him. Someone screamed, someone ducked, nobody stopped recording. "You ruined everything," he shouted, pointing at me like I had built the machine he'd been feeding. And Officer Elena Cruz, who saved my faith in the badge more times than she knows, fired one warning shot into the ceiling. Plaster dust fell like snow in bad lighting, and she yelled, "Drop it!" Travis and I didn't move. I made my voice the size of a room we could all fit inside. "Put the gun down. It's over on camera. and his shoulders gave up, his knees followed, and he said, "They made me Colfax, dire orders," and the room didn't clap. It exhaled like a lung that had been waiting 3 days to breathe. The side doors swung, and State Attorney Layla Kapoor walked in with agents who don't smile for the camera. "By order of the state," she said, "we are executing warrants for Sergeant Travis Pike, Grant Colfax, and Deputy Chief Samuel Dyer." And outside on the steps, somebody started to cry out loud the way you do when relief finally outruns fear. And up on the 7th floor of RPD headquarters, Dyer watched on mute, poured something from a small vial into coffee that wasn't going to comfort him, wrote a note that named judges and officers and said sorry, in a way that didn't help a single person he'd harmed. And when they reached his office, the screen was still playing and the chair was empty of him. It took months to count the wreckage and the repairs. PCS filed bankruptcy. The state seized accounts and sent 1 million to 296 people who should never have been turned into rows on a spreadsheet. Colfax pled when his fixer flipped and got 21 years. That will sound like justice to some and like a discount to others. 43 officers charged, some for what they did, some for how they looked away. Judges facing hearings that finally had teeth and didn't ask for permission first. Every body cam now streams to an independent server run by people who don't owe the mayor a favor. Probation contracts torn up and written clean with community oversight. That includes grandmothers who have watched every version of this city mess up and still plant tomatoes every spring. And if you want to call that progress, fine, I'll call it a start. They reinstated me. They handed me a mandate nobody wanted to write because writing it meant admitting the old way, broke people, the Office of Integrity. And the first morning I told my team what I know is true. If you need a number to prove you did your job, you're not doing your job, transparency, or you don't get the contract, independent storage, or you don't get the camera. No quotas, not written, not whispered, not hinted with a raised eyebrow at roll call. And somebody in the back said, "Yes, ma'am," and I realized I was finally speaking a language I didn't have to translate. I went back to Riverway Galleria one afternoon when the scaffolding was gone and the light fell warm through new glass. The cashier at the counter was maybe 19 and brave. "You're Captain Turner, right?" she said, cheeks pink. "My brother was on PCS. He's home now. Thank you." And I told her the truth. He got himself home. I just showed folks where the door was, and she reached under and pulled a garment bag like a magician. "We saved this for you." Inside was a pale blue dress with small sequins that caught the light like rain on a windshield. The same shade Kayla had loved the night everything fell apart. And for a second I had to blink hard so I wouldn't embarrass myself in a store where I used to be a warning label. And I carried it outside like it was a fragile thing that had somehow survived the storm. Kayla leaned against our car with new tires and an ugly scratch we refused to buff out because some scars should stay visible. 3 months late, she grinned, but right on time. And we drove out past the old PCS building where someone had painted a mural. A black woman in the rain with a crowd behind her. Hands linked, and in block letters at the bottom it said, "Justice keeps receipts." And I pulled over without thinking, and we sat quiet. Not heavy this time. More like finally, like the first good breath after a bad dream. People ask if it's over, and I tell them the only honest thing: corruption doesn't die, it relocates, it shape shifts, it waits you out. So we keep the lights on, we keep the cameras labeled, we keep the storage in hands that don't owe favors. We write rules in letters so big nobody can pretend they didn't see them. And before I sleep most nights, I touch the bracelet Kayla made for me, little silver band with her messy, careful engraving. She didn't bend, she broke the chain. And when the lamp hits it just right, those words look lit from the inside. Sometimes I think about Brock and the sentence he could have chosen that day. "Ma'am, let me check the cameras," and how one line changes a life. Sometimes I think about Patrice and whether she watches those same lenses now and sees faces instead of line items. Sometimes I think about Dyer and all the good cases we solved that got dragged through the ash of what he did, and I make myself a promise not to let the good go gray because of the bad. Mostly I think about the folks who didn't have a daughter who went live at the exact second, who didn't have a reporter who risked ribs for a file, who didn't have a state attorney who showed up with paper and a spine, and I hope this story shoved the door open another inch for the next person who needs daylight more than they need mercy. That's my truth. Not a press release, a heartbeat. You can believe me or you can scroll, but if you're still here, I want to leave you with this. What do you call it? When a system needs profit to pretend it's keeping you safe. Have you seen a softer version of this? Where you live even small, even hard to name? And did you speak or did you swallow it? And what do we owe each other when somebody says, "Hey, I think they planted that. And the easy move is to look at your shoes. Tell me in the comments if you think quotas can ever hide behind good intentions. Tell me if you think probation fees should exist at all. Tell me where you're watching from and what justice looks like on your block. Hit subscribe. If this hit, you share it with the friend who says change is impossible. Tap like so this story climbs out of the basement and finds somebody who needs it tonight. I'm Captain Maya Turner. I didn't bend. I broke the chain, and tomorrow morning, I'm going back to work. You coming with me or what?